So, first, thank you so much for coming here, Shana. It was, for me, the first time I saw this, and I've learned that this is the short version. So I have to go home now and see the long version. And where can I find it? How do I search?
If you have Netflix, you can find it.
So on Netflix, you can find the long version of this. And please share it with your friends and family to get this very important discussion also going on in Sweden, in Stockholm. And thank you so much to Naturskyddsföreningen to organize this. My name is Mattias Öberg. I'm an associate professor at the Karolinska Institutet focusing on health risk assessment of chemicals. So I have a lot of experience with being a risk assessor. But I will try to give you some maybe provocative comments or questions, and I'm really interested to hear your perspectives. But first, just to present you a little bit. You have been presented in this movie as one of the leading experts, and I can just say that already when I was a PhD student, your papers on endocrine disrupting chemicals got a lot of attention and actually started a lot of this discussion in Sweden. So when we talk about endocrine disrupting chemicals in Europe, it's very much thanks to your early studies and some of the studies that was also mentioned in this from our neighboring country, Denmark. So most welcome, Shana. CAG and Pauliina and Joëlle, you are three distinguished professors from Sweden. Maybe you can just say a few words of what is your main research area for those who don't know you.
Should I start?
Yes.
Well, you know what it is. You know
no, just keep it short so we...
Yeah. So I started as a statistician and then morphed into an epidemiologist, got interested in reproduction, and I think the key event that moved my interest into endocrine disruption was when I was asked to come to a panel of the National Academy of Sciences on endocrine disruption. And at that panel, I was the only statistician. And the Skekkebeck paper from Denmark had just recently come out, and they said to me as a statistician, here, take this and tell us if we should pay attention. And actually, how many people have seen that paper? Yeah, I mean, it's a very important paper. And Carlson is the first author, in 1992. And I looked at it and I thought, I don't think so. It's not very convincing, this first paper. It's very small, there's not many words, not much data. And I thought, well, let me see what. And so what I did was spend 6 months trying to make it go away. So what they had reported was a decline of sperm count about 1% per year, 50% in 50 years. It sounded dramatic, but could that be biased? Could that be confounding? I hope you know what that is. And you taught them, right? And so we took all the papers, 61 papers that went into this, and we went through them, each one looking at potential. Could it be because the men got fatter? Could it be they ate more, blah, 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 because they smoked more, because all things that could make sperm count go down, right? And then we put it in a big model, and nothing changed. Not to the first decimal place. This was so solid. And then my answer to the committee was quite different. It was, yes, we have to take this seriously. And that's how I got into the field. So.
Thank you for telling us that background. CAG, how did you enter into this?
Well, first I have to say I've been knowing you, Shana,
yeah,
and Stephen, your husband, for almost 25 years. And it's been a pleasure. We are also close friends. But you have meant a lot for me because I'm interested in children, I'm interested in environmental factors, and we are running an epidemiological study where we measured what's in the blood and the urine of more than 2,500 pregnant women. And the kids from these women are today 16, 17, 18 years of age. And we are very interested in what happened, what does it mean to be exposed for the chemicals we have been discussing here today in early life for the rest of their life. And Shana introduced to me many years ago where we measured what we called anogenital distance, which is the distance from the anus to the scrotum of baby boys. And we could see that phthalates in the mother during pregnancy reduced this size when the kids were around 2 years of age. And I mean, this is an example. We are so extremely interested in early markers. Markers that really we don't know how to interpret this, but they maybe mean something. And so that's my focus, humans and very much of children.
So there have been a lot of focus in the early research on endocrine disrupting chemicals on sperms and boy early development. So what do you bring into this, Pauliina?
Thank you, Matthias. So yes, I'm Pauliina Damdimopoulou, professor of reproductive biology at Karolinska Institutet, and I don't have a big story about my background, but I think I got into the environmental contaminants and fertility field when I was around 30 years of age, and I realized reproduction is the meaning of life. And of course, it's a good question what happens to our reproductive capacity when the environment gets more and more contaminated. And then it bothered me a little bit that everybody's talking about sperm, it's always about the penises and the anogenital distance and sperm counts, and there's another side of the story, the female side, and the most fertile woman only has 1 egg a month, and men make 1,000 sperms a second. So I think somebody should look at the female side as well. So this is what I've been now doing for the past years, and I do think that women are also affected, and I'm really curious to hear from Shana maybe later on if in these detox studies women were looked at all parameters, but we can talk. Yeah.
So we have the boys, the children, the girls, or at least the women. Joëlle.
Yes, hi, I'm Joëlle Rüegg. I'm professor of environmental toxicology at Uppsala Universitet. But I am not a toxicologist from the start. I'm a molecular biologist, and I've been interested in always how the brain works. And during my PhD, for example, I was studying how hormones influence the brain. And then I kind of got introduced to the fact that chemicals can affect hormonal signaling, and making the connection really easily. If they affect hormones, and hormones are important for the brain, then of course the chemicals would also affect brain development and brain function. And this is what I'm studying. And I think, so this is very interesting. To be honest, I think it's more interesting than fertility. But I think what we also should talk about is actually the connection, obviously, because a lot of things also go via the brain to the other organs. So I think there's a lot more to study also in not only direct effects on sperm and eggs, but also via the brain on fertility.
So how worried or concerned should we be? It's a tricky question, but I guess that's the bottom line for most people that are not doing research with this. Do you have any answer? Should we be worried? Should we panic? How do we deal with those feelings after seeing this very strong movie?
I think that this is one of the major challenges that our civilization is facing. That's how serious I think it is. By the way, the movie was about humans, and mostly we study humans, but I want to point out that this is a planetary phenomenon. And if we look at the number of species, the decline in species, it goes down about the same rate as human fertility. If you want to know how fast fertility is going down, it's about 1% per year. And the rate, this drumbeat of 1% per year declining, is not stopping. If anything, it's accelerating. I don't know if you know that I did with colleagues, with some in Denmark, meta-analysis of sperm decline worldwide. And that is when we went back to see, okay, how is it now? Maybe it's better. No, it was twice as fast declining. And that is published more recently, 22, that paper. And now we're looking at testosterone, and it's also going down. Now, what about the female side? The problem with females is that you can't count the eggs very easily, okay? You can't look at the egg quality very easily. So it's not like a man gives a sample, you count the eggs, you look at the quality, you have a lot of parameters you can look at. That's okay. Try to do that in a female? No. So we're much, much more limited, and we can get hormones. That's what we can do, but it doesn't, we don't have the same picture into the female reproductive system as we have into males, and that's why there's much less work. Yeah.
So, do you have any comment on the boringness?
Yes, I do. I get to lecture a lot about the environmental changes and fertility to IVF doctors, for example, nurses and midwives, and they always get so scared, and I'm trying to say that you should get upset. Do not get scared. You get really upset that somebody has allowed the system to go to a level where we keep putting more chemicals on the market every year without changing anything about the testing and regulation. We're just loosening the regulations. Also the European regulations that we're highlighting, it's maybe not that perfect and perhaps even going in the wrong direction. So unless we raise our voices, this will never change. It's such a big business. So I think the worriness is connected to, first of all, the connections to the petrochemical industry. That causes many other problems as well. And then the lack of recycling. Everybody thinks that we can recycle plastic and that's great. It's complete nonsense. So it's a linear economy that is just in many aspects contributing to the end of the world. Give me one more glass of wine and I'll tell even more about it. We should get upset, I think. Yeah.
When I started to read a little bit into this before this evening now, I realized that the organization that gave me the most easy accessible data on fertility and birth rate are the World Bank.
Yes.
That's quite interesting. I would have guessed maybe, some WHO or, no, it was on another level. And it's just, this is also an important industry. And I know that in Europe, and I guess it's also the same discussion elsewhere, that we also need these type of plastics and chemicals to reach the growth of economy, but also to keep us healthy and we live longer. And maybe we can ban, a handful of critical chemicals and we will be fine. Would you agree on that? Many of these chemicals that was mentioned, DHP, one of the key and most studied phthalates, softeners, have actually decreased a little bit in the population, as has the BPA. It has been substituted. So aren't we on the right track already?
No. So no, I think that is the problem, and that's so extremely unpopular as well. It's not just small adjustments that we can make to the whole system, because what we also know and what Sege can talk a lot about is the regrettable substitution. We take away one chemical, we replace it by the next one, which has the same purpose and obviously also then the same or even worse biological functions or effects. So unfortunately, I think we have to change quite a bit more than just kind of replacing a few chemicals that are the worst of the bad ones. But really, changing the whole way to manufacture materials as we know them now, and of course that is very unpopular. And also changing our consumption patterns, and that's even less popular. So it is unfortunately. I think, we should get worried, angry, whatever, but I think also we have to get very unpopular and very kind of different. I sometimes think that the system has to collapse before something really happens.
So
Can I add?
Yeah.
I think that the moonshot that we have to address, the really big challenge is, what will we use instead of fossil fuel to give plastic the properties that we want it to have, right? So there are many places that have looked at this, and whether it's seaweed or seashells or potatoes, or I don't know, have you all heard these alternatives? Yeah, this is, I think we don't have the answer, but we have the right question. That people will not stop using the things that we use that are made of plastic now. They need them. They're used to them. That's our life runs on it. So now we have to figure out how to make them more safely. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what I think.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of a scene or a quote in the film about the education or the kind of what chemists and material scientists learn when they study. And I think this is a very important point, and of course it's close to my heart because I'm working at the university and teaching there as well. I think that is really key. I mean, education is really a key because it's exactly as it is said in the film. I mean, a chemist doesn't even know about these things. When I teach in a master course for material scientists, they hear the first time about toxicology. So it's really, maybe it is easier than I think it is, and I hope it is. That there are inventions that will help us a lot with that.
What do you say again?
No, but I agree with what has been said here, but I just want to emphasize that, we must understand, when I started my career in this environmental medicine area 35 years ago, it was a matter of the tobacco industry. And the way the tobacco industry have handled the question from a public health point of view is a disaster. And we know they paid scientists to put away the focus of things from what was reality. Then we have to understand that the oil industry, as was said in this movie, the petrochemical industry, until quite recently, this was the biggest industry in the world since Second World War. And the lobby campaign they have been putting into the societies on a global scale is so enormous. But every time something happened, for example, in Europe, in Brussels, in the EU, they have a campaign for reducing, put away focus to something else. And this is such an enormous power. And I can sometimes feel how do we handle that? Because scientific arguments is not always the way to meet them or to come into discussion about this. This is frustrating. And the science, we have the science on place, I would say. What the industry loves is more science, do more studies. When we published a paper 25 years ago about phthalates, they said that, well, this is nonsense, but you can get more money for us to focus on this and that. We have knowledge today to really do something about this, but we have to understand more how to fight this lobby campaign.
But if I would talk to industry, at least in Europe, they would say, oh, we have quite a strong regulation in Europe. We have REACH. All chemicals on the market have been tested. Isn't that true?
Not at all.
No. It's not true.
Okay, short answer. And there is a discussion now on if this is going to be a sort of an updated version. I have no idea where that is going, if the update means just lowering the demand or...
I think the promised updates have been cancelled as far as I understand. So maybe a month ago they decided REACH is not going to be revised. It's bad for
It's already
European...
good enough, or?
No, but it's just bad for business. That's what they said. The European competitiveness is obviously linked to having a strong chemical industry, and these industries are now moving to Asia, and we cannot let the Chinese win, right? So then we have to make more chemicals in Europe. I had the chance to discuss with some commissioners' offices in Brussels, and I really had I gave my scientific statement of chemicals, microplastics, fertility. The lady was listening to me, and then she said, look, we lost 20,000 jobs this year in Europe because of these regulations.
Maybe that will be, if we get fewer, maybe it will be a job for everyone. No.
Yeah, but it's clear that it is about the competitiveness, and we believe that this is best achieved by having strong industries, and one of them should be the chemical industry. So it's not public health, human health-based decision-making at the moment, unfortunately.
So what would be needed? I mean, we have different, targets to reach. We could give maybe advice for the people, and this movie gave us a few examples of how you can sort of de-plastify your daily life.
De-plastic. Unplastic your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, there is a website, unplasticyourlife.com, if you want to see about suggestions of how to do that. Yeah.
But is there any, you said that we already have the research, should we focus on something else? Or what is needed for us in the academic sector?
I guess we should make more Netflix documentaries, because eventually somebody will watch them and react.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to see this experiment bigger and better and here. Right? I mean, you could, wouldn't that be great to have a small one? These in Sweden and in Denmark and blah, 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 blah. I think it's quite affecting. And I think that maybe, what do you think? Do you think if it was in a Swedish population here, you would feel it more? Or I don't know, maybe. I don't know. What do you all
I
think?
don't see if the so that for the public research and the people, but for the producers and the polluters, maybe, what should we?
But I was at an event in Brussels that was more focused on substitution, and I've heard a few statements from companies who actually want to adhere to strict rules. They want to have they really want to have these rules and legislation, and they also want to have adherence to it, and some kind of reward if you actually are good in using chemicals that seem to be non-toxic. I think in the end it all boils down to political decisions and politicians who are actually making brave and clear decisions, stick to them, follow up on them, and make them even better after 10 years of REACH, for example. So I think it's, in the end, it boils down to politics, and everyone can at least go and vote for the right people, or not to the right, but the one that would actually be the ones who defend these type of questions.
It's a little bit surprising that we perceive it as a right or left question.
No, it is not. It is not. There are different dimensions.
I guess you can find a lot of, conservative arguments and family values in this type of...
No, it's a different dimension. It's green or not.
So, communication would be important. What is the most common counter-argument that you, when you go out with this in public? I guess you also get critique from industry or from maybe also academic people that think, some arguments that I have heard, and I've also got those type of emails, is that if you do these type of studies and find effects like this and go out in public like this, it's mainly because you want to have more research money for your own research. So you are biased, like the industry are biased and the researchers are biased.
We don't hear that we're biased. I mean, I haven't when I go to, but what I hear is, well, 5 couples, you know. There were 6 and 1 broke up, actually. But and you know, so should we, and then there was no control group, and blah, blah, you know, there's things you can say. And I say, yes, that's true. So let's do a better study. You know, give us the money, we do a better study. And we're applying now for much larger studies. We will have 150 couples if we're funded. Who knows in my country right now what they'll fund? But you know, you could do it. And that's what I think we need is repeat this in larger, better and better in different places, and show that it's not a fluke. It's not just an accident that, you know, or a good film team. It's real. We can lower people's exposure and raise their reproductive capacity. I'm totally convinced of that. I've worked in this field for 30 years, and yes, we can do this. We can do this.
What is the most common argument that you reach?
No, I also hear this, but I mean, yeah. Okay, but I would say that, I mean, of course we need more science of many reasons, but I also think that what we don't really discuss in these situations is that there is a number of low-hanging fruits out there that we really can get rid of immediately. I mean, this substitution story is so sad. We start, I mean, take 2 groups of chemicals that is mentioned in this movie, and we know so much about phthalates in plastics and phenols, bisphenols, also in plastics, but in hard plastics. And what's going on today is that, okay, after 10, 15 years, we can ban one of these molecules. And there are 10 more molecules they can introduce exactly in the same date as we banned the first one. And we have been discussing this for 20 years, that we have to get rid of groups of chemicals. And this is really not a scientific question, it's a political question. To say that, okay, we can't have phthalates in our environment any longer. And to take it away would, I mean, theoretically, if we get rid of these chemicals, we are free from exposure theoretically, in hours. If you compare with the situation with PFAS, which is a completely another story, where no one has a solution, because they are already in the environment. But for many of these plastic chemicals, just stop using them, and we get rid of the problem. I mean, we are stuck into this in a way that we need more science. And sometimes we tell it also from the scientific point of view from us, but I don't agree upon that. We need more science of other reasons, but not for taking brave and clear decisions.
Something that really struck me when you discussed this was we're talking about this triple crisis.
Yeah.
Climate change, the loss of biodiversity, and the pollution.
And they go hand in hand.
They go really hand in hand, and maybe, I mean, I would say that the production use of chemicals are actually driving both the other two.
Yes.
Because you can't get the loss of biodiversity and the climate change without the chemicals.
Right.
So maybe we need also to give a little bit focus on that in the discussion.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because I gave a TED talk last year at exactly this point, and I said it was the 3-headed hydra. You know what a hydra is? Yeah. And that those are the 3 heads of the hydra: biodiversity loss, climate, and toxicity, and all coming from a pool of oil, this hydra. And you can't cut off one head of the hydra. You don't kill it by cutting off one head. You have to cut them all.
Interesting. Did you have a comment, Joëlle?
I do. I mean, yes, absolutely. We can have it in the context of biodiversity loss and climate change, but we see also how unsuccessful. I mean, climate change that was like brought up in the 80s, and now we have it actually finally visible. And this is also an issue with the chemical crisis. It's like it's so invisible, and we see these numbers, the decline, and I would like to your question before, it's like, oh, but how do you know it's the chemicals? It's like, oh yeah, we start to see these connections, these links with, from my field, like neurodevelopmental issues. We see associations to IQ, lower IQ. We see even links to autism or ADHD. Everyone is talking about, but it's like, how do you know that it's really the chemicals? And we start to have the numbers, but it's so difficult to show these like invisible threats, and with these kind of delayed effects that you need really big populations, really big numbers to actually show small effects.
I was, when I saw this movie, thinking, okay, maybe this is just the US problem. I mean, you have a different, or partly at least different culture, environment where people live, and the socioeconomic factors are different than in many other places. Where do you see the strongest effect on fertility worldwide? Do we have such information?
You mean which of these chemicals?
Yeah, I mean, this type of decrease in sperm counts, and is it only observed in
Scandinavia.
Yeah.
In Scandinavia? Okay.
There are data on that.
No, yeah, there are good data. That's why we see it.
Huh?
There are good studies. That's why we see them.
Yeah.
So do we know anything about Asia? Do they also have this?
We know, well, you know that in Asia, Southeast particularly, the total fertility rate is, now in South Korea, I think it's 0.75 or 0. This is a number that 2.1 is replacement, right? And so there in Southeast Asia, it is catastrophic.
So they will
Catastrophically low.
Half their own population within their 2 generations.
Yeah. So 7.5 means that a couple will have only 0.75 children. That means they will not, you know, obviously not replace themselves. And that's, but I don't have the data, maybe some of you do, or know where to think, you know, how to find it, that, is it particularly plastics that are affecting couples in Southeast Asia? I don't know, I don't see it. I don't know, maybe some people have some ideas they could tell me. I'd love to hear. But you see the problem? I mean, we have this very disastrous situation, particularly there. But are they more exposed to these plastics? I don't know.
Say again.
There is a very interesting thing going on in Sweden today and in several places in the world, namely these low fertility rates and low birth rates in families. And you have all heard about this. We are down in Sweden in 1.42 kids per couple, and this is all-time low. And the discussion here is that this is a matter of people's choice. People don't want to have children any longer. And of course, that is part of this, and there are many reasons to think about having a child in a world full of war and everything. But of course, we know, you know, that part of this is also a matter of fertility problem. They can't get children. And the government set up a committee a month ago, and I, of curiosity, looked into the members of this committee that should focus on this question. And all of them was from the social medicine area. There was not a biologist there. It was not anything about what we are talking about here. And of course, fertility is part of this story. And I think that is a mirror of something that really tells us that Well, I don't know what it tells us, but in one way or another, we haven't been successful to tell this story.
I think that's also important. If we see this in all different type of cultures,
Exactly.
it couldn't be just, the system we have in Sweden
Shana have a
right
very
now.
good story. You told me yesterday about
Other animals?
fertility
Yeah,
in animals.
Yeah.
Because they don't have this choice.
Right.
Tell that short.
Well, just that the rate of species decline is parallel, similar to the same rate as fertility decline in humans. And the animals we can't say, well, they're delaying their childbearing or they're using contraception or blah, 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 blah. No. So that can't be the whole explanation. That's right?
Yeah. And that is wild animals. So
Yeah.
something is going on here.
But let me just say, we didn't finish our discussion yesterday, so I add one more point here. The fertility decline is also an issue that can be an old story back to when they were in the womb. From our work, we know that these phthalates, and we showed it, we measured them, and the children that were born were less likely to be fertile. So it's a huge, pan-generational story that continues, and it will continue until we stop, I feel, exposing particularly pregnant women and men who are about to conceive to these.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for this fantastic panel.
Can I say one thing? I just want to thank CG, as I call him, for arranging this. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, and to help. Thank you, Joëlle.
All of us that are here.
Everybody.